Hello, Strat fans. Jimmy James here, and this is Strat-O-logy, the show for and by students of Strat-O-Matic. Today on the show, we'll talk a little tournament. On Strat Chat, I talked to Adrian Gabriel, the creator of the website DiamondDope, an amazing tool for Strat players. And on Sir Strat, I think we have a great topic, especially for those in reoccurring leagues. Trades. Few things put as much pressure on a league. Let's not delay. So sit back, grab your cards and dice, and let's roll!
Tournament play.
It's been 2 weeks since we've spoken about the mystery tournament. At that point, it was a week until the end of the semifinals. I made a few predictions, so let's see how it ended, where it is now, and how those predictions were. At the end of the season, 10 spots were set. Frankie 35, Gritch, F. Aaron, Hollow Rose, Jimmy James 209, Master Moser 56, Lee 300, Yugoslavin, Jimmy C, and Rigged Splits. Those 10 are in. At that point, the last 2 spots were still up for grabs between 4 teams. Adam Katz, Emberati 76, Pushpin 76, and Moody Mets. So, how are my predictions? Well, the first 5 were pretty easy. Those guys were all in. The next group I had, Jimmy C, Adam Katz, Emberati 76, and Yugoslavin, that I thought were on the right path. 2 of those are in, and 2 of those are right on the line. My next thought was, how would Jimmy James 209, Lee 300, and Rigged Splits do? They all did drop. In fact, Rigged Splits is really just right on the line and in by tiebreaker. But all 3 did drop their spots. Between the 2 that I thought might go up, of Pushpin 76 and Killer Mark, Pushpin 76 did, but Killer Mark didn't. And really one I did not see at all, Moody Mets. I really thought that they were just about out, but they went on a tear at the end of the season, and they made it in. Over the last week, Event 5 had its first round of its playoffs. In League 1, Moody Mets beat Yugoslavin, and Pushpin 76 beat Hollow Rose. In League 2, Jimmy C beat F. Aaron, and Emberati 76 beat Gritch. So, all 3 teams that were both on the line and in the playoffs won. And because of that, and because of tiebreakers, that leaves Adam Katz out of the finals. So at this point, we are down to 13 teams for the last 12 spots. And by next week, once these last 2 series are finished, the finals in League 1 and League 2 of Event 5, we will know our final 12. Another thing that is happening this week is that those that are already in, the 10, have started voting on what the specifics will be for that final league. They're voting on which set they'll use, the salary cap, whether or not they'll use a DH, whether or not they can use repeat stadiums, meaning can they use the same stadium they used earlier in the tournament, unique stadiums, whether 2 teams can have the same stadium, whether the divisions should be seeded or random, and lastly, whether it should be an auto draft, a live draft, or a partial live draft. And we will let you know as soon as those results are in. Okay, back after this.
You're listening to the 365 Sportscast Network, the streaming future of sports talk radio. Listen to us round the clock on the net over 365sportscast.com. on your phone with the 365 Sportscast app, and on your favorite smart speaker by enabling the 365 Sportscast skill and saying, "Play 365 Sports." The views, opinions, and content of the show hosts and their guests appearing are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of 365 Sportscast LLC, its owners and partners, or this network.
Hey guys, two cool announcements. First one, pre-orders have started for Strat-O-Matic for the football, hockey, and basketball sets. So check that out. Next, you'll want to be with us next week because I'm interviewing John Garcia from Strat-O-Matic. Okay, talk in a sec. And we're back with Strat Chat. Today's guest is Adrian Gabriel. He is the creator of DiamondDope, the amazing Strat-O-Matic tool that I know many of you use and the rest of you should be using. Thank you for being here, Adrian.
My pleasure.
I was going to give a little explanation of what it was here at the beginning, but I will not do it justice. So can you just give us a quick explanation of what the website does?
Yeah, well, DiamondDope.com is the URL. You know, I actually racked my brain for a URL, and, you know, dope was something that a term they used to use in the old days, you know, for like stats and you know, the straight dope and so forth. So DiamondDope came about from that because here I am, I'm disseminating the Strat information, and basically it's a website that does that. There's a help page that kind of explains things, and then the card reader allows you to pick from, well, really the ATG, the all-time greats game for the most part, the hitters and the pitchers and what their card values are, and also the different park effects. There's a DIY screen that you can basically put in your own values, say for cards that don't appear in the card reader. You can still get a sense of how well each card is stacked up. And you can, in fact, download that DIY tool as a desktop tool if you wanted to. You do that on the help screen. There's a lineups page that basically allows you to take a group of pitchers and hitters and figure out the values for each ballpark. And then there's also a pool page, which allows you to basically get all of the values for the players for a particular ballpark. There are some values that maybe aren't displayed, so it doesn't spell out everything for you. There's definitely underlying strat knowledge and nuance that still helps you win, but it's a great resource to kind of break down card values and so forth.
I know a lot of guys that swear by it, Adrian. It's their go-to when they're setting up their teams, especially during the tournaments, like the Barnstormers tournament. So,
sure.
So when did you start playing Strat?
For me, it was 2004. A friend of mine, Clifton Parker, who is Hack Wilson on the boards and a acclaimed baseball author himself. I reached out to him when I moved to a new town in California, and he gladly reciprocated and brought his laptop and said, "Check this out." And he was playing ATG1, and you know, I joined a league with him, and you know, of course, I immediately I had to figure out. Well, I'm a programmer by profession, so you know, immediately I started to figure out, you know, what is this game? How does it work? And so my first team, without really doing a whole lot of research, won 91 games. So I'm thinking, oh, this is easy. I'm going to have no problem with this game. And then, you know, my subsequent teams fell on their face, and then I really had to dig into the game mechanics and start to understand, what everything meant. And so, yeah, and that kind of segues into where DiamondDope came from, which is initially, when I first got on into Strat, someone had put out a JavaScript tool that would actually read the card values. And what you do is you download that, and then you could point it to a player card, and it would extrapolate the values from the card into, home runs, singles, and so forth. And I thought, well, what if I could do that on a website? What if I could just, instead of, pulling up that information real time, store it in a database and just display it? And honestly, it was, I just started a new job, and my family was about to go on vacation, so I opted not to go on their vacation and instead stayed home and worked on DiamondDope. And it literally was born of a weekend almost.
Wow.
And, but that was like the first iteration of it. There's been many kind of additions and subtractions throughout the years, for sure. But yeah, it's kind of mind blowing to think it's been around since then.
What year did it start?
04.
04. Oh, you did it right after you started playing.
That's right. Yep.
Wow. You dove in, full right into the lake. Yeah, you didn't wade in, you dove right in.
No, for sure. Yeah. And yeah, it was something that I've always been a fan of baseball, certainly. And if I had been introduced to Strat earlier, I'm sure I would have been into it much earlier. So it was only through learning about it, at that point in my life. And it was a good segue into my kind of professional skills. And so initially I built a tool that would, this was back when, all the cards were displayed online and you could see all the cards without actually logging in. So what I did is I developed a tool that scraped the Sporting News website and stored out all the card data, the player data. So whenever there was a new release, and that was starting in like ATG 1 and 2, right? And whenever there was a new release, I'd run this program and it would grab all that data and yeah. So, but as the years went by, that information has become hidden for the most part to prying eyes and web servers. So I can't really scrape that data. So it's all crowdsourced now, basically. Whenever there's a new release, new players come out. Andy Cummings on the forums does a fantastic job helping me out, getting new players loaded in or corrected if need be. But yeah, it's really a community effort right now. We just take what we have already and add to it.
Oh, it's a wonderful tool. Very cool. Do you play, you played 365. Did you ever play card and dice, or did you ever play on the computer?
I have played on the computer. I did play the computer game a little bit. In fact, I ran a lot of simulations on the computer game, taking a team and just changing their defense and just running the simulations again and again and again and just seeing what the differences were and how the defense, if you degraded the defense, what that meant to runs allowed. It was interesting because, it matters. It definitely matters. I never did play the card and dice, though. Maybe when I get to the old folks' home, there'll be a guy there with a Strat board, and we can play some ATG or something like that.
So let's talk about the different sections. Now, the first section is the card reader. That one you put in whichever card it is, and then you can put in the ballpark effect, and it breaks it down based on 100 plate appearances, right? The percentage of each.
Well,
correct?
I mean, it's based on the card, so 108 plate appearances.
Okay. It's 108. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad I let you describe it, because I'm already making mistakes there. There, Adrian. See. So.
Well, and yeah, when you do the card reader, you have a drop down for the game, and right now you have ATG 9, ATG 8, and 1986. those are the games that are available. I don't know how many people are playing 86, but if you wanna go to town on it, it's out there. And then you can pick whether to show hitters or pitchers. You sort by salary or name, and then there's a drop down, player drop down. And then once you select any item from the drop down, it automatically refreshes. So I just picked Babe Ruth, 17.27 mil and ATG9. So it brings up his team information, salary, defense, stealing, bunting, hitting and running. And then also, if you look at the breakdown, it shows you the numbers of bats, hits, doubles, triples, homers, walks, hit by pitch. And then it gives the batting average of the card. Now, some people might be confused and think that the player should hit that much, but that's what the card hits. Certainly you pair that with a pitcher and it comes down a little bit. And then, runs created, batting runs, and something called NERP, new estimated runs produced. So a few different options as far as how you slice and dice the numbers. And then the default option, ignore park effects, does just that. It actually treats the card as if there are no park effects. So it's not any place where you see the homer chance or the single chance. It is ignoring that. So if you pick a park, let's say Astrodome 99, then you'll see the numbers adjust a little bit depending on certain factors. Now, Babe Ruth's card doesn't adjust all that much because he has a lot of natural power and hits on that and walks on that card. And then there's some groovy pie charts courtesy of Google Charts. Yeah, it gives you a breakdown of the card in terms of even to the number of GBAs, GBA pluses, fly B question mark,
Yeah, it really breaks it down to where you can really see how the parks really can affect it. I used it on Dusty Baker, and that's how I realized about how ballpark dependent many of his cards were, because so many of his home runs are home run checks. So if you have him in the Astrodome, he's not very good, but you put him in Fulton County Stadium and he's going to hit probably better than the card,
Right.
Those years that he was in Dodger Stadium. So, you put one of those Dodger years back in the other ballpark he used to be in, he can get 40 home runs, even though he only had 20 on the card. And you could really see that using this. And that was one of the things that I had noticed. And then you would.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, Strat definitely illustrates some of those things, about the inner workings of baseball. Generally, park effects, certainly, and clutch, and any number of things that are sort of hidden from your typical baseball broadcast.
And then the next section is the do-it-yourself section. So that's basically if you want to use this for using the yearly set, you could bring your guys over and could work those numbers out for using it on the 2020 set or something like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of clicking involved, but basically the idea is you pick the positive values, the hit, double, homer, walk, hit by pitch, and GBAs. You put those in there, and then you could leave the GBAs out or not, but they do affect some of the calculations. And then it's basically DIY. It's a way for you to. Those cards are not represented in the card reader. It allows you to go ahead and input that for yourself. Maybe get some baselines on some guys that you wouldn't be able to get with the card reader. And actually, if you go to the help screen and scroll down a little bit, there's a little descriptor there for DIY, as the name implies, do it yourself. And then there's a link there, DIY offline, and then clicking the link will automatically download a stripped down HTML version you can put on your desktop. So you could actually run it without being connected to the internet.
Oh, very cool. Yeah.
But yeah, it's all manual. It's definitely DIY.
Yeah, but you could then use it for this tool for other sets, even other than the ATG 8 and 9
Sure, yeah. Well, I mean, if you're playing ATG, definitely use the card reader, certainly. But let's say there's a new ATG 10 comes out, and we got some new cards, and maybe the site isn't updated, but you still want to see how they are, might perform. So yeah, go to the DIY section and input those guys, and then you can get your numbers that way.
Or it could be like you're like debating between two guys in a yearly set, and you're like, oh, do I want this guy or want that guy? Yeah, maybe you don't put the whole team in, but you're like, I can compare these two cards at least.
I mean, there's also no substitute for reading the cards as well. You really should know how to read the cards even without using DiamondDope. But if you're sitting there doing the calculations by hand, why not? Why not just have the numbers?
Yeah, exactly. Now, the next page, and this one intrigues me, is the lineup. I really think that's very cool.
Yeah, the idea was to it's effectively a stripped down card reader with multiple players. So it allows you to pick up to 5 starting pitchers. So if they have a starting indicator, 5 relief pitchers if they have a relief indicator, and then a catcher, first, second, third, short, left, center, right, and then a DH you can pick from anyone effectively. But the idea is to put together a group of guys, and then you can hopefully get a sense of how that team might perform, and if in fact they're maybe a good fit for your park, and who isn't a good fit for your park.
Yeah, definitely. Now, does it work if you have a 4-man rotation or a 5-man rotation? Do you just leave that 5th spot empty?
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's just giving you totals at the bottom, and then it'll give you the number of hits and extra bases, walks, batting average on base, slugging, and then it'll give you that total for the team. So, sometimes you might only want to know that for your pitchers or your starting pitchers, or, a couple of offensive players. You could just fill out a couple of slots and it'll just look at those players.
I've done it before where I had a team that had a lot of platoons, and I put both teams in just to kind of see if there was weaknesses, if that makes sense. If there was going to be places that it was really going to dip down because I was spending a lot less on lefties than I was on righties. Is there any other way to do it where there's a platoon? Or is that the way I was doing it, the best way to do it, where you just put it each and compare them against the opposite hand?
That's probably the best way. Originally only had hitters, and then eventually pitchers were added. If you want to compare 2 players, you can do it with using one as the DH and the other as for their position. But yeah, probably what you had suggested was the best way, which is one input the other. If you have a strong, platoon where you're platooning, every position maybe. But if you're just platooning a couple guys, you do it one way, and then you pick the guys, and then do it the other way.
Okay, then the pool, that's where you recommend using Excel, correct?
Absolutely. What this does, you pick a ballpark, and it will display for you all the values. And effectively, what you should do is copy all and then paste into a spreadsheet. And it might bring over some artifacts of the HTML, some images and so forth. So you might want to do another copy of just the data into another tab, into another spreadsheet. And from there, you can slice and dice it however you want to.
And I think there's one more little piece is the where the Pythagorean record, where you can figure that out.
Yeah, I believe the Pythagorean record originated with Bill James, and basically he realized there was a correlation between runs scored and runs allowed. So record, so basically you put in your runs scored, your runs allowed, and the number of games played, and you get your record. You leave the games played blank, you get your win percentage, and yeah, it's a way to kind of figure out are you underperforming, are you overperforming.
Very cool.
It's on the help page. So if we look at any of the calculations used in the website should be listed on the web page, on the help page, I mean.
Very cool. I see it right there. There's the calculation right there. Very cool. So 17 years. That is a long time for this to be around and doing this, Adrian. That's a commitment for quite a while.
Well, like I said, I haven't been deeply involved in playing Strat for a while. And there's not a lot that I do in terms of development. A lot of what was developed many years ago, and it just continues to run, knock on wood. So I'm hopeful it will continue to run without much interference from me. Yeah, it's kind of mind-blowing to think it started back in 04.
And how many people that have used it over the years and are still using it today in setting up their regular leagues teams and in the tournaments.
For sure. Yeah. I did also want to point out it did attract the attention of Hal Richmond, and that's why you see at the bottom the little Strat-O-Matic copyright used by permission. They said it's okay if you do this, but put that at the bottom or put that on your webpage, and then it'll be kosher. So
wow, very cool. Well, yeah, they're a wonderful company, and it's like you said before, it's a wonderful community.
Absolutely. We, I mean, on the old forums, we were having events in Las Vegas and having get-togethers, and those are good times.
Well, yeah, they still have the live tournaments, and they're still doing a national champion every year, so it's definitely alive. And
sure.
And I think it's in kind of a resurgence right now. I mean, a little bit with the fact that everybody was kind of locked away.
Yeah.
But I have friends that played fantasy baseball that switched over to it because they didn't have fantasy baseball, and then once they started playing Strat 365 and they could have that many teams and in that many eras, they're like, oh, fantasy baseball ain't like what I thought it was, because in some ways it doesn't compare, I mean, in some ways it's very cool because it's about the modern day player, but then you can also have that with Strat too. So,
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for being with us, Adrian. I really appreciate it. And I really do. I do mean it when I think this is a great tool that I'm glad the community has.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate being invited, and thanks for the shout out.
You're listening to the 365 Sportscast Network, the streaming future of sports talk radio. Listen to us round the clock on the net over 365sportscast.com. On your phone with the 365 Sportscast app, and on your favorite smart speaker by enabling the 365 Sportscast skill and saying, "Play 365 Sports." The views, opinions, and content of the show hosts and their guests appearing are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of 365 Sportscast LLC, its owners and partners, or this network.
Sir Strat of the Roundtable.
Today on Sir Strat of the Roundtable, we have Sir Charles, Sir Peter, Sir Dave, and with his first time with us today, Sir Tony. Hey, Sir Tony, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Why don't you give us just a little bit of background? When did you start playing Strat?
Started with the dice game back in the early to mid 80s with Dave that's in this panel today and two other buddies, and we had a 4-team league where we kept our own stats, of course, and it was good. We kept the same players year after year. We drafted a couple teams there was two odd teams out. So it was, I think, the Padres and the Royals that we would draft every year. And we just keep it going. We kept it going for a good while. And then after some years had passed, a buddy of mine had formulated a 365 league, right, with 12 teams, which Dave was a part of that too. So after a while, I'm more from the dice game, waited a few years, and then went into the 365 game. It's fun. It really is. It's a really nice hobby.
Oh, I agree. Okay, guys, the big topic today is trades. There's, I think can be something that can be divisive. I think it's something that can be, but I think it can be a very beneficial part to a league. So, first question to go around with you guys. What makes a good trade? Okay. Why don't we start with you, Tony, since you're new with us today?
Well, I think what makes a good trade, I've always looked at it from a different set of eyes. If I benefit from that, I don't really care what I give up. Just so when I benefit from that, it helps me. I think a good trade should help both teams, right? I think that's how you measure a good trade, is does it help both teams? Now, I think we're going to hear a couple different opinions on that later in this cast. But that's why I think, as long as I get out of it what I need, that helps me win, then I'm happy with that. Like if I have to give up something to get something, I'm okay with that too, right? So, yeah, that's what I think makes up a good trade for me.
What about you, Sir Charles?
I mean, a good trade. I mean, I'm a competitive player. I want to win the trade. I want to get the best of. I want to get better value than I'm giving up. But that being said, sometimes I don't even propose a trade if I feel it's a total ripoff on my side, because I figure there's no way that my opponent's going to accept that. And I think I should probably just throw it out there anyway, because you never know who might accept what. And, that's for me, that's a good trade. And, that looks good on the surface. It seems fair, yet I know that it's helping my team more than it's helping my opponent, because I have to face that opponent.
Well, and what you said about maybe you might as well. One time I was trading with somebody and, my goal was really to get their third pitcher down. And so I offered at their second starter thinking, they'll say, that's too much. How about this guy? And then they just took the other guy, and they were willing to give me the second starter for it. And I was like, hey, I even made out better than I planned on. So I think a lot of times it's worth the risk, at least the ask.
And on the flip side, though, it's always like if someone says, hey, I'm interested in one of your players, they never offer anything that either I can use or is worth anything. It's like, don't offer me things that are worthless. And don't try to sell me on cards that are bad cards, but you're telling me that's good. It's like being in a courtroom. Listen to the facts about the cards. Don't listen to the attorney.
Very cool. Okay. What about you, Peter?
Well,
what do you think constitutes a good trade?
Like I said, a lot of, you guys know me. So what makes a good trade for me, in my opinion, is makes my team better and makes the team I'm trading with worse. And I really, really want, specifically, a lot of times I will pull a need player, for example, a middle relief pitcher. I will pull him and I will make a trade for him because I know other teams are trying to get him. So I'll just pull him out of the pool so he won't even be available. I won't necessarily always need him, but my goal is to win. And if it's not always having the best player, it's also making sure the other team doesn't have the best player. So that's a lot of the times how I approach trades.
Very cool. All right. What about you, Sir Dave? What do you think constitutes a good trade?
Well, for me personally, I rarely trade at all. Sometimes in the preseason I will, but I could probably count on one hand how many times I've traded in all the years I've been in the league and playing Strat-O. I guess that for me, the good trade would be to better my team. I don't really care. I kind of feel like I know what I'm giving up, and I'm not going to trade unless I know what I'm giving up. So whatever that player does otherwise is not going to be relevant to me, because if I'm going to make the trade, I know what I'm giving up, and so I know what I'm getting. So that's the way I'm going to look at it. I don't care what the player does after that, because none of that will drive me crazy. And also in a 24-team league, it's a little bit different trading because, in a 12-team league, you will face that guy a lot more. But in a 24-team league, you don't face the guys as much. So it's a lot more spread out. But, that's the thing. I just look at what it does for me. I don't really look at it in a like what it does for somebody else. So it's that's the way I look at it. So, and plus I don't when I get a trade offer, I know some people do this. If it's not fair, I suggest everyone just hit the decline button and move on and don't take it personally.
He tells me that all the time, guys, and I take them personally. I get really mad when I get ripped off or get it. I don't make the trade to get ripped off.
It's really
it bothers me that like I'm insulted by it or something, Dave. Is that correct?
He takes it like a personal attack on his entire character and being. You know,
I do that all the time.
Just hit decline and move on.
Early this season, when you offered Jim Esiason for Jim Sundberg, I got a little bit personally attacked with that, James.
There used to be a guy I used to play with, and I traded with him a couple of times, and I got the much better end of 2 trades with this guy. And finally, I proposed him a trade, and he sent me a message via Facebook, basically like, "Don't ever contact me again. You know, I know you're trying to swindle me. Like, you took advantage of me once, and then, you know, just leave me alone and stop." And then he ended up accepting the trade like 2 days later. Like, like
one of the other reasons I don't trade is because I think there's enough free agents out there to help your team, and you can help your team internally as well.
Yeah.
So that's another reason.
Well, and then also one of the controversies that I've encountered is, and actually we've had it in our league, is if you do not like a trade, decline it. Don't let it sit there, because somebody proposed me a trade. I wasn't quite sure I wanted to make the deal, and I made the deal like 10 days later, and I clicked accept, and he got upset, and he's like, you know, he thought I swindled him. I said, well, you know, sorry, man, like, it was on the table, I wanted it, and I pulled the trigger. So I mean, I think a lot of people will shy away from trades because they want to avoid that interaction. They don't want to feel like you got taken advantage of. You know, you're in a league with friends, and suddenly somebody says, "How could you do that trade? What are you, an idiot?" Well, you know, and then suddenly, you know, somebody will look at you like you're a pariah in the league, and you know, I've had that issue, not just with this league, of other leagues. Like, everybody starts to say, you know, you took advantage of our friend here. Well, you could have just hit decline.
Well, I think it's important to note too with trades is know who your trade opponent is. For example, like Sir Tony will only trade for defense 1 or 2s.
Yep.
That is true.
And other folks will only trade balanced salary, regardless of how fair the trade is. And other players don't care if it's salary, as long as, you know, they know the cards better, and as long as, you know, they're thinking that, you know, it's a better match. So, you know, I don't like to waste my time considering trades to improve my team if I know I'm kind of going into the unfriendly zone of an opponent.
Yeah. Well, I know I just won't trade with you because you won't listen to my BS. Like, I can't sell to you because you'll know. You're like, no, you're just full, you know, you're full of it. Like, I'm not going to take your, you know, your worst Ken Griffey Jr. card because he may hit a home run against lefties every 300 at bats.
Peter, I'm not going to buy a car from you, nor will I accept your bet in court relief pitcher card.
I was waiting for that. Go ahead, Dave.
Here it is. Yeah. Well, I mean that's the trade that sort of sparked my whole interest in this topic. That was the infamous trade that sent our group. It was so what did I traded? I traded Rafael Betancourt, who was my middle relief, for Eric Gagne, who ended up being on his best season. I think it was his MVP season, right? He won the MVP that year.
He was on his third at the .86 card.
Yeah, .86 card.
One of his 3 best cards.
And it started out very, very much, hey, what do you think about this card? You know, Betancourt's just underperforming. I sort of sold it, and I just proposed it. And the other player just accepted it, and suddenly, you know, it became this, wow, like, how can you do this? And I mean, it achieved every single one of my goals. It made everybody else in the league not as good as, you know, I had the best bullpen in the league. Everybody else was worse as compared to mine. And I greatly improved my team. And I basically took another team and made him completely unable to compete. So there's one less team that I have to worry about when I want to make the playoffs. It sort of threw the entire league into picking sides. It was interesting.
One of the reasons I brought that up, because normally I don't bring it up unless and this one was blatant. And it ended up being Betancourt's 136 card.
Yeah.
That went head to head. So I mean 1-1. It was 1-1. So, and the key was the team you traded with was 20-46. So they're out of it, you know. Whereas you're a first place team. So that was like, if you made this trade with another contender, I'd be fine. You know, I'd be like, all right, fine. If they want to give away Gagne, go ahead. But the fact that it was this, and by the way, I'm not blaming you for it. I think more on the other side, the people giving it away, because he could have just hit decline. And here's the thing. I mean, I know I hear that well, if he wants to do it, he can do it, and that's fine. But I think for the good of the league, if we see something as blatant as this, and the thing about it is that these were both relievers. So his best reliever, Gagne, was on one of his 3 best cards. We knew that. His best reliever, he's going to trade for another reliever who's clearly worse. That makes no sense in any way, shape, or form. You know what I mean? Now, if he trades for a hitter or a starting pitcher or something like that, and be like, okay, that makes sense. You know, he has to get more hitting or pitching or something, because what do you need to close on a losing team for? You know, but the fact that he took the same position and made it clearly worse, and obviously by far, that was when I looked at that, I'm like, this isn't right.
Well,
so that's why I think we should step in and just say, wait a minute, you can't do this. You got to get.
You can't fix stupid, as they say, right? So like, how do you police that? Because it wasn't collusion. Right. He wanted to make the trade. It just was a bad trade, and we can't police or babysit bad players because they're bad players or they made a bad deal.
Yeah. So you brought up a good point. So when I propose trades, when I start looking for trades, I start searching for the last place teams. Those are the guys who probably aren't very good players, right? They're just, you know what, I'm going to try my luck and just try something and try to mix it up. And, you know, I mean, why would a first place team, I mean, you know, Tony's in first place right now. Why would he mess up a winning formula? You know, I mean, and mess up that quote unquote team chemistry. I mean, you go to the last place teams and you try to just like in baseball. I mean, I grew up, you know, in the Yankees in the 90s. They would cherry pick all the worst players from the Royals and the Pirates and all these bottom feeders at the time. That's how they were the farm system. That's how I go about trades to start, because the guy in last place is probably going to give it up. And he may not, you know what? He also may not look at his team, and he may just open his email and say, oh, wow, somebody wanted to talk to me, click accept. And it just happens. So that's how I go about it. I understand the competitive balance, you know, issue, but if you had made that trade, if somebody else had made that trade, I would have been mad that I didn't think of it first. That's really where I go. I mean,
yeah, and that's the thing. We're looking from where we look at it. That's I'm kind of looking at it for the good of the entire league, and but like MLB thing though. I understand what you're saying there, but that's kind of irrelevant, because you can trade for next season and so on. These are all mutually exclusive seasons, so you can quote the future. But and that's I guess what it is that if it's so blatant, I mean, like. Tim, you said that you know, how do we police it? It's just on these blatant ones, these completely ones that are so ridiculous. Obviously, the team that traded you didn't look into it and say, is this a fair trade? No, he just probably hit accept. So if we could deal with it that way, we could just say, okay, well, he did it, so that's it. You know what I mean? Game over. That's the way it goes. And the one thing I don't want is that happening more and more and more. And then, you know, like people are like, oh, okay, well, I'm out of it. So here you go. You want my starting pitcher? Go ahead. Just give me anybody you want, you know, and stuff like that. So that's it.
And I think the thing about it is that I'm always going to propose those trades. But I think the benefit of having somebody like me in the league and somebody like you in the league is great, because you raise the red flags. I'm like, this is crap. Like, he made a stupid deal. So what you've also done is you've also kind of alerted some people who may not be alerted, and they may not be as receptive to trading with me. So, it's effective that way. I mean, it screws me up a little bit, but for the most part, so it also forces me to have to be fair. So, I mean, I don't like to be fair. I've only made 2 trades since because I couldn't, unload my crap for something good. But so, I mean, that's effective. I mean, the way of policing it is basically by, speaking up. I mean, I never took offense to it. I took it personally for oh my God, this guy thinks I'm trying to, and then I realized, no, he's just mad because he doesn't want the league to be this top heavy league where we pick on.
Once again, we reiterate enough is that the records where people were in the standings was a big part of it.
Yeah. Well, and again, that's just where you and I see it completely different. Yeah. I mean, I will pick on for lack of a better term, I don't want to sound like this heel here, but I'll pick on the less informed and the teams that I think have nothing to lose by trading away teams. And there was another trade I made. I made 2 pretty big trades in our season where we did the 1999 season. It was the season I chose because I had won the year before. I had to throw that in there, by the way. I made 2 big trades, and there was a big deal. Eric Milton was one of the top pitchers in the league at the time, and I ended up giving up like Steve Paris and Warren Morris and Ron Gant, really some middle-level players that weren't doing much for me, and I got one of the top starters, and everybody sort of said the same thing. And I knew I was proposing 3 guys that meant nothing to me and probably weren't going to help out the other team. But it ended up becoming, how do you police that? How do you tell somebody, well, hey man, you made a really bad trade? I mean, that's, you're also walking the fine line of now, I mean, people may not want to play in your leagues because, I'm afraid to make a move, or they're going to chastise me.
Or they quit. The season before we had a collusion deal, and I had to write to the Strat-O-Matic email, and they reversed the trade, and they agreed based on their rules. Their rules basically say is you can't just ditch your team and make bad deals and drop good players. It's part of their competitive rules for competition. And the guy that got reversed, who had totally colluded and gotten the better of him, ended up saying, "I'm not playing with you."
Yeah.
Well, I think intent comes into this, and I think once you bring up the collusion part, there's 2 sides to every contract. There's Peter is asking for that and for that trade, but then somebody else, like we said, is accepting it. The question is where along that line off of the experienced players, because there's oftentimes in a league, there's a real variety of experienced players. And if you've got a guy that's only played 1 or 2 seasons of Strat-O-Matic ever, that can be very easy to take advantage of. And then I think I have a different opinion off of that one if I is compared to a guy that's been playing this for a year or 2 years, and then I'm more like buyer beware.
And I agree as well. And we make jokes about it, but I mean, I'm a pretty knowledgeable player, so I'll talk myself into some of these trades, and I'll explain, hey. And I'll go to the Rafael Betancourt. I mean, hey, like I did my analysis. I really think it's this card. I think Gagne is on his best card, but yada yada yada. I don't think you're going to be able to play him right. You need middle relief. You don't need a closer. And I didn't necessarily lie to him. I was pretty upfront. The Betancourt card ended up. I missed it. It was the worst of the 2 cards I thought it was. But I mean, I wasn't noticeably deceptive. And again, I submitted the trade to him knowing he would decline it, and then he just accepted it.
Yeah.
So good for me. But Again, if it's intentional, like if you know there's somebody who doesn't know how to read the mystery cards and you blatantly lie to somebody and said, hey, I know that I had an injury reveal and this is his best season, and you know blatantly, I'm not okay with that. I didn't, I've never intentionally deceived somebody. Again, I can talk somebody into this. What can I do to get you into this card today? I've done quite a bit of that. But, and
it's the intent also on the other side. Like Dave was saying, if the guy's 20 and 45 and his intent is to get better, and he just does it in a poor way, that shouldn't be. That shouldn't be. But if on the other side, he's ditching those guys because he's hacked off because, I've lost 9 in a row.
Yeah.
Now he's affecting the league, and it becomes very easy for the league to be warped.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that ends part 1 of this roundtable on trades. Next week, we will have the second half of it. A big thanks to all of our roundtable guests.
You're listening to the 365 Sportscast Network, the streaming future of sports talk radio. Listen to us round the clock on the net over 365sportscast.com. On your phone with the 365 Sportscast app, and on your favorite smart speaker by enabling the 365 Sportscast skill and saying, Play 365 Sports. The views, opinions, and content of the show hosts and their guests appearing are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of 365 Sportscast, LLC, its owners and partners, or this network.
And that is all for our show today. A big thank you to Adrian Gabriel from DiamondDope.com. Thank you to all of our roundtables, Sir Peter, Sir Charles, Sir Dave, and Sir Tony. To the regular cast of characters, Andrew Burkham, Joaquin Lewis III, Jimmy Dees, Carolyn Snyder, and the music man Jeff Teczon. All the music today was written and produced by Jeff. If you like the show, tell your friends. Find us on social media. Follow or like, whichever is appropriate. Rate us wherever you get your podcasts. Check out our website, www.strat-o-logy.com. Phone us at 855-888-0096. Thank you guys for listening. Hey, Jeff, can you play us out? Listen to us every Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific on 365 Sportscast Streaming Radio. Same Strat time, same Strat channel.
Jerry James.
You're listening to the 365 Sportscast Network, the streaming future of sports talk radio. Listen to us round the clock on the net over 365sportscast.com. On your phone with the 365 Sportscast app, and on your favorite smart speaker by enabling the 365 Sportscast skill and saying, Play 365 Sports. The views, opinions, and content of the show hosts and their guests appearing are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of 365 Sportscast, LLC, its owners and partners, or this network.